Good evening, everybody, dear colleagues. Using telemedicine, we want to discuss the medical, legal, and ethical aspect of this subject. First, thank you, Dr. Sinj, Professor and Head of Department of Forensic Sciences, School of Bioengineering and Biosciences. Thank you, Administration of Lovely Professional University, for this opportunity to collaborate, and I hope it will not be the last one. Please forgive my Egyptian accent if you don't understand something from me. Let's ask you first, what's your experience with telemedicine? I will ask you again at the end of this webinar, and we will see the experience of each other. Let us start to discuss the objectives in COVID time. Of course, telemedicine is used maybe 10 to 15 years in many medical subjects, as consultation, as in operation, in conferences sometimes, but nowadays it is used extensively, and we see a lot of forms of e-health care. So we want to discuss this subject from a different point of view: how to protect doctors, how to protect patients, respecting human dignity, respect ethical codes all over the world, and respect laws at the same time and regulation in every country. Okay, this subject is very important to us because in Egypt we don't have any regulation as regards the telemedicine and what are the penalties. We have penalties for violation of medical practice, but we don't have any regulation as regards principle of telemedicine, application of telemedicine. It is just a new substance for us in using this healthcare in practice. Of course, we know a lot about telemedicine in conferences and in education, but not in practicing it. Health products can be seen over the internet as selling drugs, selling equipment, selling kits and chemical for testing, for diagnosis or prognosis. A lot has been sold as a nutritional supplement. Health services used now for education, consultation, collaboration, awareness and prevention of diseases, follow-up, assessing the information, managing diseases, and other decisions like insurance, like employment, like paying something through internet. I use telemedicine by myself for awareness and first aid treatment of children in the poison center before coming to the poison center. Okay, what can influence the telemedicine? What are the factors affecting the information and communication technology in health sector? This will be influenced by cost of this service, access, speeds of the internet, education and training of personnel. So we have an infrastructure and we have personnel factor. In new models of healthcare services, patient, doctors, machine, all together has been involved in this process, and few constraints will be imposed by geography, regulation, institutions, and so on. Let us start from the beginning by the definition of e-health and telemedicine by WHO. They called it is use of information and communication technology for health. And telemedicine is a subset of e-health. It is a sort of practice and delivery of healthcare using this ICT. But It is a method of interaction and not a mechanism of delivery of treatment. The World Medical Association has a broad definition for telemedicine, where it is a practice of medicine over a distance in which interventions, diagnosis, therapeutic decisions, and subsequent treatment recommendations based on patient data, document, and other information transmitted through telecommunication system. You can see this. This is part of what we call a medico-legal and ethical challenges. We have challenges as regards the traditional doctor-patient relationship, standard of care, quality of care, privacy, confidentiality, consenting, liability, accountability, data protection, record keeping, data storage, and authentication. This is part. Let us take just a few points from these to be discussed. And we will start with physician challenges with telemedicine. We know that doctor-patient relationship has been based on interview, taking history, making examination, asking for investigation, and then he will conclude and final diagnosis and proceed to treatment. So it is a long process. We use telemedicine in this part if that physician cannot be physically presented within a safe time and acceptable period to help that patient. It can be used for management of chronic conditions, follow-up after initial treatment. Of course, we know it is a relation based on mutual trust and respect. So we must ensure that the patient data, confidentiality, and privacy are not compromised. A proper informed consent should be taken from the patient before starting this process. And we can consider that some patients cannot afford this process. One of the Facebook feeling angry, one of our colleagues, that he is criticizing putting the name of COVID patients on the Facebook and discussing the clinical condition. As regards privacy and confidentiality, we mean these items for medical record, images, videos, audios, copies data. Sometimes it's so personal, highly sensitive. We are presupposed that this data can be freely transferred and shared through digital network for second opinion or for consultation. The patient should know that this data may be confronted with threat of misuse or violation. Of course, there is laws all over the world for what we call unlawful breaching of confidentiality. In Egypt, Article 3 and 10 penalty law said that if, as a doctor, if you're breaching the confidentiality of the patient without legal causes, proper cause, of course, you will be confronted with 6 months of imprisonment with a fine ranging from 200 to 500 Egyptian pounds. What about the informed consent? It is a major issue, okay? Consenting is part of autonomy and self-determination principle. In certain countries, it is not enough to take an oral informed consent, like in South Africa. Their health professional council stated that it should be written and witnessed and signed before starting this process at all. If we are violating this in Egypt, we are confronted with 268 article penalty law. It is imprisonment from 3 to 7 years according to the age and conditions of the patient. So we are consenting the patient for the medical treatment by using the technology. So it is 2 points, not single point. We are informing the patient the objective of this telemedicine, the role and responsibility of the provider and the patient during this interaction, the role and responsibility of other people involved in their interaction, documentation, risking and benefits, and then we let the patient decide to join this process or not. If your patient is under 12 years old, you are asking for a guardian consent in addition to the assent of that minor. As long as you are the initial doctor, be sure that even after consultation you are responsible for the treatment for your patient. As regard recipient of the information, it is not able to identify the patient from the data has been sent to him for second opinion. So once your data is on the internet, it will stay forever, even if you are pushing the button delete. So the disclosure of information on social media should be kept minimum to protect the rights of the patient, and the practitioner must be aware that there is always a risk that information can be disseminated of what so-called invisible groups. There is another sort of violation. It's not this time for the patient, but it is the doctor. His privacy will be violated as 24/7 because the patient can send to him and can ask for his consultation or his opinion at any time. He can exercise, of course, his professional autonomy in deciding whether to make a telemedicine or face-to-face consultation, and he should be sure there is no violation to the legal and ethical framework of the country. Be sure that your patient can use the telecommunication system. Keep a detailed record of your advice on the medical record of the patient. Be sure that your patient understands whatever you are suggest or advise him and the step of treatment. As a patient, ask yourself a question. Are you sure that the person communicating with you is a healthcare professional? Is he licensed? And does he have an e-license? In some countries, they necessitate that your regular practicing in medicine license is not enough and you need a specific e-license. Part of quality of care is competence, registration, and authorization. Your physician should be licensed to practice. The delivery of this telemedicine should be evidence-based, should be guided by a high degree of safety, quality of care, positive health outcome. Like all health care interventions, it should be tested for effectiveness, safety, efficiency, feasibility, and cost effectiveness. Of course, to deliver these telemedicine services, it must be established protocol for referral of our emergency services. Okay, a major issue which we are seeing with doctors is medical responsibility. Of course, we knowing that medical malpractice means failure of the medical professional to follow an accepted standard of the practice, which will result in harm or death of the patient. And we have two articles in penalty laws in Egypt, 238 and 264. The first for the type of penalty and the second for compensation. Of course, the penalty will be imprisonment. The usual liability formula is duty owed, duty breached, with damage to the patient, either death or injury, and there is deviation from the proper or accepted medical standard. This malpractice could be in the first step in diagnosis or in asking investigation or in the treatment step or failure to follow. Just a real example from mistaken diagnosis. A patient was rushed to an emergency room complaining of severe pain, abdominal pain. Okay, and she has previous advice by phones from a doctor that she has GIT upset, and he treated her as regular gastrointestinal condition. After 7 months, she is diagnosed as a colon cancer. Another malpractice condition where a patient complaining from a wrong diagnosis secondary to a message sent to one of the doctors on the Facebook, and he was complaining from obesity and he wanted to lose weight. So the doctor just prescribed him some medications. Of course, he will suffer from the side effects of that medication, which is interacted with his previous uh, general condition. Okay, another mistakes when someone is complaining from pain secondary to carrying some grocery, and she has just uh, analgesics medication. Later on, she was diagnosed as dislocated joints. Of course, the mistake in treatment can be any by wrong diagnosis, inaccurate dose, or non-approved medication, which is very, very common nowadays because many of the drugs has been transported and you can ask to buy it anywhere if it is FDA approved or not approved, license or not. Follow-up error is common, and I know one of the cases by myself where a patient has a fracture in his legs, and the doctor was fixing this by uh, corrective measurements, and after that he doesn't follow that patient up, and the end results for amputation of the leg of that patient. He was 35 years old, he's very young and he's athletic, and it was a major problem for the doctor. Of course, there is some errors like taking informed consent, and it will be a major aspect or major concern in cases of telemedicine if it is not properly regulated. The recording, if you are not keeping the record of your patient. Of course, some patient we are seeing now is refusing to join the emergency room, or he is can be admitted to the hospital. They are afraid from infections. So a proper interaction with these patients will be very, very important to avoid malpractice claims. Okay, let us think with each other. Do we exposed to malpractice after advice treatment on telemedicine, and how to reduce these malpractice cases? Telemedicine is not an excuse to be non-accused by malpractice. So malpractice is the same even if it is in e-healthcare. Okay, so just few tips to protect yourself. Please take an informed consent, detailed one from your patient, doing your best in the medical care, taking a second opinion if you are hesitated about something that is maybe complication in your patient or something strange in your patient. Complete your documentation and please follow the standard textbook in this completion process. Don't hesitate to order any required investigations. Choose qualified assistance if it is possible. Double check for information, please, with your patient. Sometimes they are not understanding, sometimes they are lying, sometimes they didn't configure that it is important. I remember one of the accidents. I was in the surgery wards maybe few years, when I was a house officer, and we are ordering all the patient that they shouldn't eat anything because they will have an operation at 8 o'clock. Okay, the last meal should be maximum 12 o'clock. Next day, one of the patient has aspiration and a lot of rice was in her stomach, and after treatment and awakening up of these patients, we asked her, we confirm and we give you a precaution not to eat, and she said it is not a meal, it is just few spoon of rice. This is why we should confirm and check and recheck with each patient. And communication, please communicate properly with your patient. Okay, medical certificate is very important and recording is very important. Don't write anything false or anything incorrect in your medical certificates. Don't be shy to reject an asking or a question from your colleague or from your acquaintance or from your patients. Don't be shy to refuse such a thing. Don't take money because it is unethical, and by law in my country we can be convicted by bribery or false testimony, and this means imprisonment by criminal law. It's not any law. It is very important thing. Don't be shy, please. If you are going to talk about the violation of privacy, confidentiality, and consenting of the patient as regard the research, it is a big issue and it will need another webinar. Just few lines. Research has been published in Lancet involving 96,000 patients all over the world. All of the patients doesn't know that there is a research from the beginning, and all the data has been shared electronically from the hospital records. Let us have a few words about social media and professionalism. We are talking about social media, just few tips to you as a doctor. It can blur the boundaries between you and your patient, and this will influence your professional factors and professional attitude. Here what I'm talking about social media is like Facebook and like Twitter and something like this. You are advised not to interact with your patient via social media platforms. This will considered strictly unprofessional. You should protect your personal data from your patient, except in emergency or life-threatening conditions. If a patient is seeking the healthcare advice over social media, ask him politely to have an appointment. In health advice, if we share this online, it must be evidence-based, scientifically sound, generic. The recipient must be directed to consult the health practitioner in person before following through. Here another problem. Sometimes as doctors we are putting some instruction which is in this area related to the COVID, and if you are taking vitamin C and paracetamol and chloroquine, if you are taking as a precaution, this will prevent COVID to affecting you. This makes the people rushing to take all these stuffs from the pharmacies, and we have deficiencies in these drugs. So it is unethical to publish something like this over social media. Legal and ethical consequence of social media, Facebook and Twitter and something like this. Okay, whenever you are posting your ideas, your opinion in something, this will affect your employability. recruitment. This may be monitored from your country or from your boss. This will affect your development of your career. Another thing, sometimes your post may be taken out of context and disseminated. This you can be accused. If we are going to talk about violation in research using telemedicine, it is another article and another lecture. But just these days we have a scandal, okay, where 96,000 patients all over the world has been um, violated, taking their information and records and sent to one of the major journal. It was Lancet, and this uh, article will be withdrawn. Okay, in debates, sometimes you can put in your opinion and may be incriminated by law as regard defamation, hate speech, copyright violations. Don't please post your opinion about the skill and reputation of your colleague on social media. You can be sued for this, and it is unethical. The relationship between practitioners in a case should be kept for the purpose of the relationship. Of course, if you are advised your patient and give him treatment and it was a wrong treatment, or he's not giving you sufficient data and there is a mistake, you will be confronted with a malpractice case. If your colleague make an inappropriate comment, don't respond, please. Don't impeach on a public platform, social media. Health practitioners are advised to include disclaimers in their social media profiles indicating that the views expressed therein are their own and not those for health profession or the health establishment they represent. It is a huge problem today we are confronted with about the ideas for the opinion on the doctors, or opinion for the officers, or opinion or the economist for the country. All persons putting their opinions. Okay, if you are in a managing or in a position like doctors, like head of department, like head of university, don't be involved in that conditions, please. Um, of course, social media can be used for advertisement and promotion of good and service, and you can be used for this or misused for this. For example, if you are making professional interview with your patient during waiting time, maybe the Wi-Fi service can be promoting her stuffs or goods. You can see here advertisement for telemedicine. Turn your clinic to online and examine by video. Another form here, we will have a kit for COVID. Stay at home with gloves, masks, and some medication. Social media platforms is never guaranteed. The identity and location of the user can be traced. Please take care of this. Once content is shared online, it is difficult to remove. It will be there permanent. Avoid using social media when you are stressed, upset, tired, okay, under influence of medication or alcohol. And always adjust your privacy setting to restrict public access to your comments. If you are proposing an ethical solution, it is suggested that any telemedicine guidance must be sensitive to societal and cultural difference. We are different, and this is not a mistake. This is not a bad thing. We should be considered this. Be responsive, proactive, and flexible to the rapid technology's transformation in the healthcare industry. Foster and build user confidence in adequate protection measures in this context. Align with clinical guidelines relevant to specialty. Okay, before goodbye, message. If you are using telemedicine, consider the following regulation. Disclose the information if it is known by the patient or your consumer. He may change his mind, he may be not understanding properly, he may not using even your product or service. Be trustful, not deceptive. Provide health information which is accurate, updated. Respect the user right to determine if he is allowing or not to share and collect his personal data. Respect the obligation of the product and protect the user's privacy. Respect legal laws of the countries. Inform and educate your patient and clients about the limitation of online healthcare. Of course, you cannot do an operation while you are in your clinic and he is in his house. Provide meaningful opportunity of users to give feedback to the site and monitor the compliance with the eHealth codes of ethics. The end line that telemedicine is great. Advances can be used in healthcare support and improving the quality of the medical care, but it is not a replacement of regular care. It can be used as adjuvant to normal medical practice, but not doing this instead of medical practice. Face-to-face service is an essential between you and your patient. And until the laws and regulations change in the countries like our country, as well as in infrastructure for e-health, we are confronted with civil and criminal laws as usual. Neither COVID circumstances nor good intentions will protect any of us. Take care of yourself. Okay, how do you feel now about your telemedicine? Thank you.